Do you not know where to start with choosing the right fuel for your runs? With all the products on the market, it can get confusing which one might be best for you. And if you're wondering what the difference between gels, chews, or liquid options are that you should be taking during your long runs or your next race, we are going to clarify that for you today. Really, how to choose your run fuel is the topic. And I brought back on an expert back onto the show. So welcome to the Healthy Runner podcast, where we help you get stronger, run faster, and enjoy lifelong injury-free running. In this episode, Coach Brooke, registered dietitian nutritionist, is back from our Spark Healthy Runner coaching team and Intentful Nutrition to clarify this important topic when it comes to choosing the nutrition you should be fueling your body with as a runner. In this episode, we're really going to cover who should be fueling for their long runs and races, when should you be really practicing this fueling strategy, how do you even begin to sort through all the products on the market, and we're going to talk about the differences between the gels, chews, liquids. Is there an advantage to using the liquid fuel over gels, and is there an advantage to using whole foods? So, Brooke, thank you so much for coming back on the podcast to share all your knowledge and wisdom. It's always great to connect with you. So thanks for being back.
Yes, of course. Thanks for having me, Duane. And I'm really excited for this episode because I just have so much to share. And I know that this is something that many runners always have questions about. So I hope that we address lots of questions today.
Yes, absolutely. This is like one of the most common topics and questions that we get within our Healthy Runner coaching program, within our Healthy Runner Facebook group, our community group. So I am excited to share this on the podcast today. And for those of you that don't know Brooke Czarnecki, who is a registered dietitian nutritionist, she's a runner, and she's an expert within our Spark Healthy Runner coaching team. She's passionate about helping runners to prevent underfueling by learning how to effectively fuel your body so you can enjoy life's adventures. And as we know, trying to grow as a runner, I know most of you are listening to this either coming out of your, I'm going to call it younger years of being like an adolescent runner. Maybe you ran in high school, maybe you ran in college, or even maybe you started running in your 20s and you really didn't know how to do it. And now you want to get more educated on it. Or you could be like an adult onset runner like me. You're in your 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, and you've started running. It could be overwhelming. Like if you don't have a plan and you don't have a strategy, a lot of times our running gets slower or worse. We wind up getting injured. And it's really key to master 6 elements to growing as a runner, to not only feel more confident in getting stronger and faster, but you're going to stay healthy and enjoy the process of running again. One of those elements is proper nutrition and fueling your body for running, right? That is one of the key elements. And that's the one that we're really focusing on today. And for those of you who aren't aware and you haven't listened to other episodes before, we do have a Spark Healthy Runner freebie ebook that really takes you through these 6 steps to growing as a runner, where it's a roadmap with a ton of supplemental resources, visuals, videos of trainings on specific topics like what should you be doing for your run plan, your strength training for running, nutrition, what we're going to talk about today, and then also recovery, and then also race day strategy, and then the all-important mindset. So we get into all of those 6 steps to growing as a runner. So make sure you get your download by going to learn.sparkhealthyrunner.com to get that resource and all of the bonus content with it. And then also, I always like to remind folks that we do get questions, and I love questions, honestly, especially on Instagram. If you want to shoot me a DM, Spark Healthy Runner, at Spark Healthy Runner, and I'll be happy to answer your question. But what's even better, or if you want to remain anonymous, you can submit your question to be answered on the next Ask Duane podcast episode, where whether it's a running related training question, an injury question, a nutrition question, a fun fact question, or a question you want to ask myself, Brooke, or anyone in our Spark Healthy Runner coaching team, we'll be happy to have it. And I would really welcome it on the next Ask Duane episode. So we are looking for questions. So just click the link in the show notes to submit your question, and we'll get to it on the podcast. And I love hearing your questions and interacting with you. So please submit that content. I thank you in advance. It will just help more runners really get answers to questions that they're probably wondering as well, because it's probably not just you. Let's be honest, right? We've all had those questions before. So before we kind of get into this deep dive topic, Brooke, do you want to share with us the exciting news of the launch that just happened in your world?
Yes. So the Actively Fueled podcast is officially up and running. There should be, at this point, 4 or 5 episodes for y'all to tune into. And I'm just like so excited about it because it's a podcast. We're going to talk about things that we don't often hear about in running. So I really wanted to focus on like the mental health aspect of running and athletes, and just how to best support our bodies to prevent burnout. And, doing this nutritionally, physically, and mentally. Like, how do we prevent burnout? How do we achieve longevity in our sports and do it in a positive way? Because I feel like sometimes running can become like this really toxic energy and this a toxic environment. So I'm just really excited to deep dive into a whole bunch of different topics and really focus on that mental health piece of athletics. So I'm so super excited for the podcast, and I can't wait for it to continue to grow and, help many, many more runners. So I'm very excited.
Yes, I'm excited for you as well. I know you're going to be able to help many, many people tuning in to your show. And yeah, congratulations on the podcast launch. It's going to be exciting to see that thing take off, and for more people to learn how to really like fuel their bodies and stay active. So I'm super excited about that. And so let's get into this topic, guys, of kind of one of these really important elements to growing as a runner is like mastering this nutrition bucket, if you will. And so, Brooke, if we could start off by just sharing with us, like, who should be fueling for their long runs and races? And I guess this is like a common question I know a lot of our clients wind up asking us, like when their long runs get up to, and I don't know if you're going to kind of get to this, but like when their long runs get up to what amount should they start, fueling for their long runs?
Yeah. To even back that up to the very beginning of like, who really should be fueling? Everybody, no matter what your pace is, no matter when you started running, like no matter what your experience level is, every single person who is moving their body needs to be fueling their body during their long runs, if they're doing long runs, and leading up to their races and for race day as well. So there's no criteria to, well, I don't qualify for that, or I'm not a good enough runner to start fueling my long runs. I hear that all of the time. People are like, well, I'm too slow. I don't need to fuel my long runs. It doesn't matter what your pace is. It doesn't matter if you're super fast. Like, you have to be fueling your runs. I know I fell into the trap like in college where we would do like 12-mile long runs and I'd be like, oh, I don't need fuel. Like, I'm too good for that. And I just like seriously sacrificed so much performance and not feeling good during my runs because I refused to fuel my body properly. So everybody needs fuel. And if you are running over 60 minutes, you really want to be thinking about bringing fuel. And when I talk about fuel, I'm talking about both food and hydration out with you on your long runs. And this truly can make such a big difference with your performance and just the way that you feel. Like, if you ever feel like you get to the end of your last couple miles in your long run, and you're like, it's just a slog, I just got to get home. My legs are starting to feel like bricks. My energy's tanking. Like, that's likely a fuel issue. So if you're running over that 60-minute mark, you've got to be thinking about bringing fuel with you. Again, regardless of your pace.
Yeah, no, great point. And I hear that a lot as well, that, I don't, or I've never needed to fuel before. Like, why
Yeah.
should I start now? And it's like, but
Yes.
wait, you're telling me you actually want to get faster, or you're telling me like you don't want to get injured anymore and you want to get out of this injury cycle, but you're training your body hard and you're not actually fueling it appropriately. So you're like running on E, right? It's like the car analogy, that the car is, running on E. Or it's like, if we use the house analogy in how to grow as a runner in our 6-step plan, it's like, trying to, do something on your computer with no electricity, right?
Yes.
Your battery life on your laptop is only going to last so long, right? And then you're going to have to plug in. And if you don't have electricity feeding, right, your laptop, that thing's going to shut down, just like your body is going to shut down with running. So thank
Totally.
you for kind of bringing that up. That really, we all need to fuel, whether or not you are like a very accomplished runner and you're super fast and you're like, I don't need it, right? Like you were competitively as a younger athlete, right? Or if you're feeling like, well, I got into running for like weight loss and I certainly don't need to be eating more calories. Like
Mhm.
I'm running because I should be burning calories, shouldn't I? And right, I'm sure you get that one a lot
Yeah.
as well.
Yes. And the other thing too is I'll work with a lot of runners and they'll say, "Well, I've been doing it forever. Like I've been doing long runs without fuel forever." And it's like, "Well, just because you can doesn't mean that you should." And oftentimes we don't realize the amount of performance or even just energy, the way that we're feeling, we don't know how much we're leaving on the table. And so when you start to actually fuel your body properly during those runs, it's like you fall in love with running again because you're like, I didn't realize how incredible I could feel with proper fuel in my body. And this has happened to so many of my athletes. And they're like, I truly, truly underestimated how much better I would feel if I started to actually like put effort into my nutrition during my runs. So, don't underestimate the power of nutrition. And just because you can go, 3 hours without fuel on your run doesn't mean that you should. So I'll leave it at that. But truly, you don't realize what else could be unlocked when you go and you start fueling with proper nutrition during your runs.
Yes, like just imagine, guys, like what more you'd be able to do, or what more joy, like you mentioned, you would have for running if you actually fueled and were like happy during
Yeah.
your run and didn't feel like this was like a slugfest, and where
Yes.
your legs were like super heavy and you just didn't have the energy. And why did that last mile feel so hard? We hear that a lot. So yeah, just imagine the possibilities if
Yes.
you do fuel. So, from what I'm gathering there, to summarize, who should be fueling for their long runs and races? Pretty much everyone. We don't discriminate, right? Everyone's welcome to start, the fueling train, right? Hop on board. We're going to start fueling for our runs in order to really provide that spark, right, for our running, so we can keep the lights on, essentially.
Love that.
um, so that might be a new tagline. um, so when is really the best time where we really need to start practicing with fuel? Because, and full disclosure, some of the folks that I work with, if they're coming back, or not even, I don't even like to say coming back, they currently have a quote unquote running related injury, whether it's plantar fasciitis, IT band syndrome, runner's knee, right? Like shin splints. Usually, right, we're not having them stop running, and we're actually having them start with like a run walk progression. And I'm taking them through like each week. So, some of those runs, they could be either 20 minutes long and it's run walk, they could be 30 minutes long. So when is really like the best time, for runners to really start practicing with fuel during their runs?
Yeah. So when your long runs are exceeding that 60-minute mark, even if it's run walk, like that is, I still recommend that you start fueling at that mark. And I say the same thing to my hikers. Like I work with a lot of people that are just outdoor people. The same rules apply. So it's really any endurance exercise over that 60 minutes is going to require that fuel. And like start early, right? So as soon as you have those long runs that are exceeding that 60-minute mark, that could be, week 4 of your week 20 marathon plan. Like you have to start early and getting yourself in the routine of always fueling when you have runs over an hour it trains your brain and it trains your body that that's just what it's going to expect. That's just what we need. And so practice, practice, practice really makes perfect. And then it also helps prevent all those like dreaded GI issues because you have so much experience with, what works, the timing of what you need to do to have, less GI issues, the products that you like. And so the earlier that you can start, the earlier or the not pushing off starting, to fuel during your long runs, the better. So as soon as you start to hit that mark of 60 minutes, okay, I need to start fueling. And that could be, as early in your training as a week. So, don't underestimate again how soon you should start in your training plan.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. And even I've shared this on the podcast before, but even some of my shorter runs, even that are less than 60 minutes, I just started fueling with, something small prior to my
Yep.
runs, and making sure that there is some fuel on board. But definitely even sometimes even a harder run, let's say I was doing intervals or a tempo run, I might take fuel with me on that run, even if it was like at that 60-minute mark or even slightly less, depending upon, how much fuel I had on board, depending upon like timing from when I woke up. So really the earlier you start, the better. But definitely if your run is lasting more than an hour, like you should definitely be fueling is what I'm hearing from you. Is that correct?
Yep. And to clarify too, when your run is longer than an hour, I don't mean to start fueling at an hour. And sometimes that can get confusing as well. So if your run is longer than an hour, I recommend that you start fueling within the first 30 minutes of your run. So I want to clarify that too, because that can get tricky. Like some people are like, oh, I don't start fueling until I feel it. So if you are feeling hunger or you're feeling that energy crash, it's too late. Like we want to try to get ahead of that. So I always recommend fueling like within your first 30 minutes of those longer runs over an hour. And this includes water too. And, even during like those hot summer days, yeah, I'll bring water with me for even like a 30-minute run because I'm sweating. I know that I'm losing a lot of fluids. And so even just having water with you on like a, 3 to 4 mile run when it's 90 degrees and it's humid outside can make such a big difference too. So play around with it. There's no like hard and fast rules. And if you want to fuel when you have a 45-minute run, go for it. Like there's nothing, there's no hard and fast rules. There's room to play.
I'm so glad that you clarified that because, yeah, many runners do feel that way that I'm not going to fuel until either that 45-minute mark or that hour mark. And yeah, I think that's key. And, we talk about that in kind of our race day strategy. And you've shared that before on the podcast in our marathon specific nutrition episode of really getting ahead, right? And it's not a matter of, once you start to feel that energy start to come down or the second half of the race, it's like, no, you're fueling like in the beginning of the race when you feel absolutely great. You
Yep.
feel like you're on top of the world, you're just like, hey, this is a piece of cake. Like, no, you are getting ahead of it. And I think that is a mindset shift, I think, for many runners because they're really not used to, they're used to being reactive versus like
Yep.
proactive. And you know how like proactive we are on this show in talking about strategies like strength training to prevent running related injuries or to actually get faster, versus getting that injury or like running a bunch of races and getting slower and then you're like, oh, maybe I should start strength training perhaps, or maybe I should actually start doubling down on recovery strategies for my running. So yeah, proactive is definitely key. And yeah, so this fueling topic, there's a lot of stuff out there, Brooke. I think any runners ever search for anything, probably on like Google, winds up getting like ads thrown at them. You like search one thing and then you get like all these ads for all these different products, and there's so much out there. So how do we like get rid of the noise, or how do you even begin to like sort through all of the products on the market? What do you recommend for runners really to kind of find what they should be using to fuel their bodies for their runs?
Yeah, such a great question. And again, like it's so overwhelming. Even I was training for one of my one of my first races in a long time last year. And it had been years since I was training for anything. And I was like, whoa, there are so many more products out on the market that I like just not even aware of. So there's just so many things. Like it's so overwhelming. And the first thing I want to say is just that there is not like one superior product. So I know that like marketing is always like really good on all of these products, but there's not like one product that is 100% superior to another. They all can serve your body in different ways, and every single person is going to be different in what works for them. So I just want to put a disclaimer on that before we talk about anything, because like I said, so many products, marketing coming at you from all different directions. You just got to find what works for you. And the way to do that, the first thing I always say to my runners is like, find a product that you think you might like the taste of. Truly, like you have to like the taste of what you're fueling with, or else you're not going to fuel. I had that experience. I didn't take my own advice, and I tried the new flavor of Honey Stinger on race day, and it was bad. And I couldn't get it down. Like it was
Nothing new
so
on
bad.
race day. Come on.
It was so bad. I was like, I love all the Honey Stinger flavors. This is a new one. Like I'm gonna like it. No, it was terrible. So truly, like first I say whatever you think will taste good to you, pick those products. Like if the flavors sound good, it's looking like something that you might like, try it. So first thing I always go for is the taste, because if you don't like the taste, you're not going to do it. You're not going to fuel with it. And then the second thing that you might like to consider is how you're going to carry your fuel. So sometimes the size of the product makes a difference. You know, sometimes there are bigger products with lots of fuel, lots of energy in them. Sometimes there are smaller products that have more bang for their buck in terms of energy and carbs. So be mindful of how you're going to carry your fuel. Like, are you going to have pockets? Are you going to have water bottles? Like, how do you want to carry your fuel with you? So that's another consideration that you might take into account while you're picking out your fuel.
So just to chime in there, so if you don't have a lot of storage, essentially, right, and you plan on like stashing gels perhaps in like shorts or like sports bras, and you're running a marathon and you need a lot of these things, that's
Yep.
probably not the best strategy, right? You want to make sure you're thinking about like, how am I carrying this stuff? And for those of you that use a vest or a hydration vest, like, yes, those are great because you got lots of pockets on there. You have lots of areas to stash. But I've seen a couple of runners at races unfortunately lose their fuel that was like just hanging out on their waistband, or I've seen like some crazy stuff. People like just tape it to their shorts and then like the tape comes off. So yeah, I think you bring up a great point. Is like, all right, what do I actually want to carry with me? How am I going to like transport this? And then from what I'm hearing from you is certain products are larger than others, and certain ones have a little bit more, maybe more calorie dense in
Yep.
like a smaller size versus like their competitor that's a larger size.
Yep.
Okay.
100%. Yep.
All right. Point well taken. Got it.
Yes. And then just like the next point is chewing. This is so funny. I talk about chewing with my clients like more often than I thought I ever would. But like, do you want to be like really chewing on something? Some people don't care. Some people can chew just fine when they run. I am not a person that can chew when I run. It's like I'm trying to do too many things at once. I'm like out of breath. I feel like I'm like inhaling through my mouth. Like it's not a good scenario. So you know, if you're somebody that doesn't like to chew, maybe chews or like whole food options are not for you. So just kind of take into consideration what you think like the mouth feel essentially. So if you're gonna be distracted by chewing, or it's gonna cause you like just a little bit of anxiety, that's something to consider. So how much chewing do you want to be doing? That will also play into your decision of what you're choosing between like gel versus chew versus maybe a liquid fuel option. So that was my next point. And the last point that I'll make too before we kind of dive into maybe like more specifics is the product going to give you what you need for your runs? So when you're running, you need between 30 to 60 grams of carb per hour. So are the products that you're choosing getting you to that goal? Same thing with your hydration. You're going to want at least 250 milligrams of sodium per hour. Are the products that you're choosing going to get you to that goal? So looking at the backs of packages, reading labels, things like that, those are going to help you determine like, is this going to help me get to my goal? Or how many of these do I need to help me get to my goal? Because sometimes you might need 2 gels to get to that. Sometimes you might need 3 gels to get to that, depending on the brand. So just, again, things to consider if you're like short on space, or you're somebody that's like, I just want to eat as like least, what am I trying to say? time wise, you don't want to be eating like every 10 minutes. You want to be eating every 20 minutes, something like that. So just
Mm-hmm.
taking those things into consideration.
All right. So kind of considerations that we want to look at as runners is like taste. First and foremost, you kind of mentioned like, hey, you want it to at least taste good, right? You don't want to be like holding your nose as you're trying to like, ingest this thing while you're running. Because I'm talking about coordination, right? Try to do that. The size of the product and really size does matter perhaps in fueling for running. The chews, or if you're a chewing person, or like I'm a big chewer, like I love chewing my food. I don't love chewing on the run though. So yeah, I'm never satisfied what I eat if like, yeah, I don't know. I
Yeah.
don't do well with like soft, mushy food. It doesn't do anything for me. Like I love my carrots, I love my apple. Like I got to crunch into something and use those like muscles of mastication. Mastication, guys. Like I don't know where everyone's mind is, but that's our chewing muscles in your jaw, by the way. So for those of you who have TMJ issues and
Yeah.
dysfunction, now we're like really getting like sidetracked here, but you might not want to chew a lot because you got some spasms in your masseter muscle or your chewing muscles. And then the fourth point I heard was really calories wise and how dense is the product, how much fuel do you need for that particular run, and thinking about timing in terms of, if I'm going to be taking this gel once every 15 minutes or this one, I can take one every 20 minutes. Right? Did I understand you correctly?
You sure did.
Right. I was taking notes here, so I was good. I got four kind of main points. Awesome. So yeah, what is we kind of mentioned gels, and then you mentioned chewing, and I've never actually tried these, like full transparency. But I hear about these like blocks
Hmm.
and other chewing options, and they have like the waffles, right? The Hungy Stinger waffles, and I know some people use those, but like, what's the difference between like the gels, the chews, or even like liquid fuel options?
Yeah, I love that question. And before I forget, I wanted to mention the feed.com. Um, it's a way for you guys to try like single items. So if you want to experiment with different fuel options, you can just buy like one single honey stinger of a certain flavor or one single UCAN flavor of, whatever it is. So you can just like, you don't have to buy a whole package of something. Like you're not committing to a whole package. So the feed.com is really useful for this. But the difference between like a goo or a gel versus a chew versus a liquid option, really, they're all going to give you your carbohydrates. They're all going to give you some sort of electrolytes. So it truly just depends on what your preference is in terms of, again, that mouth feel and how you're going to be ingesting your fuel. Sometimes the chews are made with a different type of carbohydrate, so they might be sometimes easier to digest. Like if you have like GI issues, if a runner tells me I can't do the liquid options or I can't do the gels because they really hurt my stomach. They just like immediately cause diarrhea or they immediately cause cramping. I'll say let's try a chew option. Sometimes the carbohydrate makeup is a little bit different and the digestion is slower because again you're chewing on that actual chew for a little bit. It's not immediately going into your gut. So sometimes it's a tolerance thing as well, and with the differences between the gel versus the chew versus the liquid. But truly, it's more about what your preference is and how you are going to be most efficient at getting fuel in your body. But yeah, a lot of my runners love the blocks because I don't know, it's just like you just pop one in your mouth every couple of minutes and it's a lot easier. So, like I said, sometimes it's a lot easier on the stomach too. So whatever you want to experiment with.
Right. And there's like the jelly beans, right? There's
Yeah.
like a bunch of different chewing options. Um, yeah. So, all right. In kind of those are the differences between. So, from what I'm hearing, is really just how do you want to ingest your fuel? Do you want to drink it? Do you want to take it in gel form? Do you want to chew it? But then also, there might be different carbohydrate makeup of each of those. And then I would say probably even the differences between gels, right? So
Mhm.
like UCAN, for example, is, the gel that I use in my runs. And I've talked about many times in this podcast. They've been a like supporter of the podcast from the beginning, long before they even had a gel, by the way. but their gel is made up of more of like a slower acting carb,
Hmm.
as opposed to like high sugar. So if someone did want to avoid high sugar products, whether, because sometimes I know runners, especially when they're, exerting themselves to the max, like at a race, don't tolerate a lot of sugar well in their GI system. And, UCAN has kind of worked out for them where it isn't that high sugar content in the product, but really looking at the different types of kind of carbs that is made up of the gel or even of the chew, as you're kind of deciding.
Yes. So, like, for example, if you look at some gels, they have like fructose plus maltodextrin, and then like another chew or another gel might have just like glucose plus basmati rice. Like, there's different carbohydrate sources in the gel. So if one gel doesn't work for you, doesn't mean that all gels won't work for you. So you can look at the ingredients and try to decipher like, oh, okay, what kind of different carbs are in here, and just again play around with it, experiment around with it, but don't discount like a product or a gel because like one didn't work for you. You can try a different brand that maybe has a different makeup, like the Morton gels or like the SIS gels. They have a totally different makeup than like a goo, for example. So yeah, there's lots of different options out there that you can play around with.
Okay. All right. And then I know runners have mentioned this to me. I don't know if you've had, the similar conversation with kind of texture, right? Because a lot of
Mhm.
them totally different texture too. And I know some people may try, let's say, a goo that's on a race course, and we're just saying goo because I feel like that was like the
The
OG. That was
popular
like the
one, yeah.
first one that ever came out, I think.
Yep.
So that one was like popular at most races, but I have definitely seen a shift last couple years in terms of like what fuel is on the course at a lot of the races. But if that didn't work for them because it was too thick, like I get a lot of runners that like, I just can't like take the gel, it's like weird, it's this thick texture. Each gel is different as well, right, in terms
Yep.
of like consistency. And that's is one of the reasons why I do like the UCAN option, because it is like a thinner consistency. It isn't as like thick where you're like, take one gulp and then it's like you got to chug your water right after it just to like get it down your throat.
Yep.
Um, so there's different textures out there as well. And yeah, thank you for sharing that, the feed.com. That's kind of cool to be able to like not have to invest in a whole box. If you have commitment issues, guys, and you don't want to commit to a whole box of a product just to give it to like your running buddy, you can check out that website that Brooke mentioned to try single serve options for you. And is there an advantage to doing liquid fuel over the gels and the goos?
Yeah, so really no like advantage in terms of performance. But again, if you're finding that you are not somebody that likes to have, your hydration and then you have your fuel and you just want it all in one, the liquid options might be for you. And the liquid options that we're talking about are the options that have like 200 to 400 calories per serving in them. These are not just like the products with like 20 grams of carb per serving. These are more like 40 to 50 grams of carb per serving. They're oftentimes called like super fuel or like high carb fuel options. And you just dump it in like your water. So you're getting your hydration plus your fuel all in one. I will say that sometimes athletes have a hard time tolerating that gut wise. So, just be aware of that. Again, like all of these different products are going to potentially react differently in your gut. I have a gut of steel. I can kind of do whatever I want. Some runners can do that. A lot of people can't. So you
I
got to
despise
play
you.
around. You got to play around. That could also be, I'm still pretty young. Maybe like in my older years, I might not be able to do that. But so yeah, and for cyclists, we probably don't have any cyclists listening to this, but like a liquid option is I oftentimes recommend for
We
bikers.
got triathletes who listen to
Do
this
we?
podcast. Oh
Okay,
yeah,
great.
absolutely.
So like triathletes, cyclists, I do recommend like a liquid option usually because you're not fiddling with like a wrapper on your bike. You're just taking, your nutrition through a bottle and you don't have to worry about it. So that can be really easy. So those are like the advantages to the liquid fuel options. But again, nothing is like superior in terms of performance wise, like this is the product that you want to use. It's purely a preference thing and potentially ease of access to the product.
Gotcha. Gotcha. And yeah, definitely carrying options like we had talked about before is going to matter in terms of like how much liquid are you going to take with you.
Mhm.
Um, and then how about, because I know Coach Kat on our team is a big fan of doing more whole foods, and she's talked about this in a couple of previous episodes before. And I know she does like the UCAN bars, either during a run or before a run. And, is there an advantage to doing like whole foods versus the gels and the liquid fuel options?
Yeah, the only advantage to the whole foods is if somebody has a really sensitive stomach and like the products that, usually if I have sensitive stomach peeps, I'll be recommending like products like More Inner UCAN or Spring Energy Gels. If those aren't working, then like the whole food option is oftentimes the route we go because of the GI distress. Like the stomach can tolerate that a little bit better sometimes with some people. But we don't need to be worrying about like eating too much sugar or getting too many carbs on our run. Like your body's a carb is a carb when you're running, your body's not recognizing the difference. It's just wanting fuel. So, again, performance wise, nutrition wise, there's no advantage unless it's like whole food or no food. Like we're going to need to go the whole food option. So purely it's a GI distress, a GI tolerance advantage, if anything, with the whole food options.
Gotcha. All right. So it is a little bit easier for those who aren't tolerating gels. And you've tried multiple gels, you've tried multiple liquids, then you're definitely going to want to try some whole food options. And then I just feel like the trail runners, right? Like
Yeah.
usually wind up fueling with more like whole food options, it seems. I don't
Yes.
know if it's just like a culture thing or it's just because they're out there for so darn long. You probably need something besides gels and liquids, I would imagine.
Yeah, and like usually with the ultra runners, and I've worked with quite a few ultra runners that are training for like 100 milers. It's a tolerance thing in terms of taste. Like they can only take so much sweet stuff because a lot of the gels and chews are sweet, and so they just get like flavor fatigue. And so we're trying to be creative with different options that give you lots of carbs that aren't super like protein heavy and stuff like that. So yeah, there's definitely an advantage for the ultra running community to do more of the whole food options every now and again throughout the race, but it's fueling during running is such an art. And I like to describe that to my clients. It is an art. There's no science to it. I mean, there's some science to it, right? Like we have our boundaries that we want to get to with our carbs and our sodium and our fluids. But after that, it's like you're painting your own canvas in terms of what is going to work for you and how you're going to get that nutrition in your body. So again, don't be afraid to experiment, have fun with it, try different things. And once you find something that works, like stick to it, So, once you find it, like stick to it. I have my, regimented, my favorite gels, my favorite chews and stuff like that. So I'm a creature of habit.
Yeah, when you find something, like definitely like don't switch it up. Like if it works for you, it works. And but then I'll also add to that, Brooke, right? Like you had mentioned, you kind of alluded to the fact that I was like old before. I didn't, say it at the time, but I'm gonna call you out on it now. As you age, right? Body changes, like hormonally things change. Especially females,
Yep.
about this in terms of like perimenopause, postmenopause. And I do find like a lot of runners where something that worked for them 5 years ago, 10 years ago, isn't the thing that really works with them now. Do you also find that?
Yeah, that's a great point. I do have a couple athletes that have had that experience as well. So yeah, excellent point to bring up too.
Awesome. So guys, if you want, more nutrition of more of Brooke's goodness, and she has actually put together a free downloadable ebook on really the ultimate kind of nutrition guide for runners. So if you want to get kind of the top 5 nutrition tips, you want to get the ultimate snack guide to give you some ideas on what you should be fueling your body with during the day. Today's talk was all about kind of running or fueling during your run, but we also want to be fueling our bodies before your run as well as after your run, so you can have proper recovery to fill that recovery bucket of our 6 steps to growing as a runner. So you can download that free ebook that Brooke has put together by just going to learn.sparkhealthyrunner.com. And if you're a runner who's really looking for more individualized nutrition plan, like you've tried all the things that Brooke has just said, and you've tried this, you've tried that, and you're really looking for more of an individualized nutrition plan, and you want to prevent underfueling so you can run that half marathon or you can run that marathon without hitting the wall. You can learn more about how to work with Coach Brooke as your individualized coach, registered dietitian, and then also get all the goodness in terms of one-on-one kind of individualized run and strength training to keep you healthy as a runner. Then you can check out more about our signature Healthy Runner coaching program by going to learn.sparkhealthyrunner.com/coaching. Brooke, this has definitely been super helpful. Hopefully this provided some guidance in how we really choose our running fuel. Any other things that you did want to mention that we haven't mentioned so far?
Just the one thing that I did briefly mention earlier that I said, do as I say, not as I do. Don't try anything new on race day. Or, another great tip is like a lot of my marathoners, they can't, like take a vest, or it just depends on the certain regulations. A lot of the majors, you can't wear a vest. So check out ahead of time, like what fuel is going to be on the course, and practice with that during those longer efforts before the race, so that you're not going in and like just trying a new brand or a new item on race day. So that's something that we didn't mention that is probably a good one to mention as well.
Yes. Super, super important for those, especially doing the marathon distance. Find out what they are going to be giving on the course. And even though they're going to have it on the course, definitely bring your own as well.
Yes.
Don't rely on the course and where you're going to get it on the course, because sometimes they run out. Stuff happens where it's not there at the table when you expect it to be there and you need it. So definitely bring extra. And I know you've mentioned that before in previous episodes of like, if you've planned that, hey, I need 3 gels during my half marathon, or I need like 6 or 7 during my marathon, bring an extra 1 or 2. And if you have an extra at the end, I'm sure there's going to be someone running next to you who needs one. And you can be
Yes.
like that friendly, runner and be like, hey, you need a little energy here? Here you go. I got some extra, because I planned for the unexpected, gel drop, or, losing something, or you just need more fuel on race day for that given day. So, Brooke, thank you so much for taking time out, as always, to educate our healthy runner community about how to fuel and what we should choose to fuel with during our runs.
Absolutely. Again, thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's always fun. You could bash me about my age, and I won't hold it against you. Guys, thank you so much for listening and really investing in educating yourself on how we grow as runners and learning more about that nutrition bucket. And you got to fill that bucket, guys, in order to grow in your running journey, no matter what your running goal is, as Brooke mentioned. So thanks for taking your time to listen to us during your run, or really checking out the video version on our Spark Healthy Runner YouTube channel. Make sure you check out all the places you can follow Brooke that I'll have in the show notes, and check out her new podcast. I am sure that you are going to learn something on there, and you're going to love that as well. So if you like this training, then you're definitely going to like the previous episode that Brooke talked about how to eat like a runner in episode 169 on the Healthy Runner podcast. Or if you're watching the video version, just like click the video that I have for you here next. As always, guys, let's maintain a strong mind, a strong body, and let's just keep on running. Until next time.